Hello and a very warm welcome to the Ref Show. Well, you've got to start somewhere. 2 bad blunders in the Premier League, but you have to acknowledge it's been a better weekend at the top for our referees. Nevertheless, one incident could go down in the annals of history as one of the worst decisions ever. Well, we've made a good decision. We've brought the scorer of the very first goal in Premier League history, Brian Deane, onto the panel this week. Brian, a warm welcome to you. You're with Mark Halsey, and I don't think there's any real history, is there? Between you were contemporaries as referee and player, but have you got any memories of each other?
Not really. We had some good banter, didn't we? He used to tell me what a bad game I was having, and I used to tell him what a bad game he was having. But other than that, we had a few words on the field.
So you can't have booked him or sent him off or anything. You weren't booked very often, were you?
No, I think I was now and again when I got angry, but Mark was one of the better referees at the time.
Oh, really? You've got to say that.
I've not paid him for that.
Okay. Well, let's have a look. I know Brian's been looking at the incidents across the weekend, the round of Premier League games, as has Mark particularly closely. Fair to say, fewer errors this week, Mark?
Yeah, it's good to see. I think there were some really good performances this weekend. I mean, we had Mark Clattenburg at Aston Villa, Liverpool, showing his class. Mike Deane as well had another good game, and Martin Atkinson seems to be hitting some form. So it's good to see the referees doing well, and it's really pleasing that we can talk positively about them.
Indeed. Well, this is coming off the back of a regular 6, 7 or 8 major errors and talking points that we've had. So just to narrow it down to 2 or possibly 3, relatively is an improvement.
It is, and perhaps they'll be watching our shows.
Well, I mean, this is what we want
to
see. We want something positive to talk about, which we will. But we can't shy away from the fact that one of these errors, we will come to that later on, is quite stunning, really. But it's the magnitude that makes those errors talking points. Talking of praise, Mike Deane, Manchester City, Arsenal, that was 2-0. The penalty against Company.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Mike handled the game right appointment, big game, big referee. I thought a couple of his yellow cards. There was 1 or 2 yellow cards I felt he could have managed a bit better, and I just thought that on the penalty, I thought it was harsh, but I can understand fully why Mike's given that penalty. I mean, where can Company go? He can't go anywhere. He can't get out of the way. He don't have to get out of the way. I just think perhaps Company's. I mean, Brian might be able to back me up on this, but I just think Company's body movement towards the monorail sold it for Mike Deane.
What do you think, Brian?
Well, I was going to say I looked at the incident again, and I think Company couldn't go anywhere. I think what he's actually done is he's actually looked as though he's tried to step back. But the problem you've got nowadays is that any kind of contact in the box now is deemed a penalty. We talked about the incident with Jermaine Defoe, which was pretty similar. And that was more of a penalty for me.
Yeah. It doesn't mean to say that every bit of contact, it's a foul.
Exactly.
Or every handball's a handball. Yep. But it's recognition. And as I say, the Company's movement to Monorail, and I think Monorail initiated the contact as well. Because he knows that Company's just made that slight movement towards him, and then it asked the decision of a question of Mike Deane.
Staying on the positive note, Martin Atkinson, whose performances really have improved dramatically from a difficult start to the season. West Ham 3, Hull 0. I don't think any issues.
No issues. I mean, Martin should be able to referee those games well. I mean, because he's a good referee. There was no big decisions to make, and every referee would want to go through a game without a big key match incident to
one of your former clubs, West Ham, one of your many former clubs, and doing particularly well, maybe even surprisingly well, Brian.
Yeah, if you look at the way how they've been playing this season, compared to the moans and groans last season, the way how they were playing, you look at what they've been doing. They look as though they're playing very good, entertaining football. And
which people said that Sam Allardyce couldn't play, but he's proved his adaptability.
It is, but I think that's a little bit harsh. If you think about when you go into a club like that, you've got to look at what you've got to try and get the best out of the players. And I think now they've got Andy Carroll up front, but they've also got some quick forwards as well with good wingers, so they can change it around.
No one's calling for Sam's head now, are they?
They certainly are.
And I bet Blackburn Rovers wish they'd kept him.
And we've got big Sam Allardyce, we're very proud and happy to say, on a special question time panel in London. That's coming up in February, more details later on that. Andre Mariner, talking of an improvement just on this weekend, Leicester 0, Stoke 1. There was just 1 yellow card in that game, and I've looked and I couldn't see a talking point, but I think you're going to raise one, aren't you? Are you going to raise one?
No, not on the not on the
this particular...
no, not on this game. I think Andre.
Well, that's something.
It's good to see Andre coming back. He's had a bit of an indifferent Christmas period, but it's all about confidence. Whereas, as Brian said, as a player, it was the same with referee. It's all about confidence.
You've got to start somewhere. He's got that under his belt. A good performance there. There were no yellows at all in John Moss's game, although it did resemble a practice match. I think at times. Swansea 0, Chelsea 5.
I think there was there. I think it's good to see. As I say, it was a training game, but I think it was a funny incident in the game where John Moss took an offside off the assistant referee. Very, very dodgy ground when you start doing that. But it's good. It's good to see him keep out the headlines.
And Neil Swarbrick. We'll talk about Neil Swarbrick in the Sheffield edition of the Ref Show because he's handling Sheffield United in the Capital One Cup semi-final. But on this occasion, QPR 0, Manchester United 2. Any issues?
No issues at all. It's good to see him come out unscathed. That's what you want as a referee.
All right, we get on to the talking points, Brian. Just as a general rule or a general observation, I mean, we've said here that no pleasure or delight has been taken by Mark or Keith Hackett, regulars on this panel, or David Hurst, who's been on a few times, about the number of errors this season. But it does seem to have been an unusually high number. What do you think? What's your view of that?
I think now it's a little bit different to when I was playing. The referees come under so much scrutiny now, and having been a manager myself, the problem you've got is that it could be 2 points, it could be 3 points that you're losing as a result of a bad decision. So, when I was in Norway, for example, the first thing people want to know what you're thinking, and you're still full of emotion, for example, and you can't help sometimes but dig out the referee.
Yeah.
But it is fair, and it is a bit of a lonely job, I think, and I've got a lot more respect now. But
for referees than you had before you became a coach.
But it doesn't mean that I won't have the same feelings and thoughts the next time I'm on the touchline.
Right. Let's move on to the big talking points then. And Mark, the first of these, we're going to talk about Phil Dowd. Burnley 2, Crystal Palace 3. Really, there wasn't a lot to criticise in that, and Phil Dowd's a very experienced referee, but there's just one thing, the Burnley second goal.
Yeah, it was interesting, wasn't it? I mean, I thought that. I mean, obviously both players went off the field of play accidentally, and I felt the Burnley player had impeded the Crystal Palace defender off the field of play.
2 or 3 yards behind the touchline. Clearly,
it's. I mean, if it had been on the field of play, it's clearly a foul. So, any young referee out there watching our show, yes, you still can stop the play for the infringement, but you restart play with a drop ball. But it was clearly an infringement against Crystal Palace that happened off the ball.
What do you think, Brian?
Off the field?
I can't agree with you there. I think that I think the game's going soft, to be honest, because you've got 2 guys there. He's looked for the foul, and he's just tried to get back on the pitch to try and win the ball. That's me.
Yeah. Yes, as a player.
That's me as a player. I think that it's too easy now for players to go down and then they get a foul just because they've gone down.
And there's nothing more annoying than the ball being shepherded out by a player, is there?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he went down. I thought did he not clearly sort of hold him?
I mean, there's 2 guys. I mean, they're both 80 kilos, whatever.
It's good to have a bit of disagreement because the game is about opinions.
Of course it is. There was a lot of discussion on that fact. But the point we try to get across to any young referee is that if you do see that and you do deem it as impeding an opponent, you can stop the play and then restart with a drop ball. Point
well made. The big talking point, I don't think anybody's in real disagreement over this, was Spurs 2, Sunderland 1. It's just fortunate this incident actually had no bearing on the result. It was towards the end. It should have been 3-1 to Spurs. Vertonghen, for anybody who doesn't know, hasn't seen it, I'm sure there's nobody who hasn't seen it, was ruled offside in his own half.
Well, I first heard about this. I was flying back from Spain, and as soon as I stepped off the plane and switched my phone on, my Twitter went absolutely ballistic, and it actually sent me the film, the clip of the incident, and I just sat there and watched it, and it was just unbelievable. I just could not believe.
How on earth did that happen?
Well, I mean, I look at it and I think, officiating at that level, that should just not happen. That error should not happen. Okay, people are looking at the assistant, Mr. Nunn, which I believe is going to go away on UEFA core course, sent by the FA.
As a response to that?
Yeah, but
But the referee was very close proximity.
If you look at the play, Chris Foy was there. Okay, Chris Foy's there. The play's gone on. The ball's gone in the back of the net. The assistant's raised his flag. Now, as a referee, Chris Foy should have gone over to the assistant referee. He should have asked the assistant referee, "Look, tell me what you've seen, please." And the assistant referee would explain to him what he'd seen, and then Chris Foy would just have come back and said, "Listen, I'm there." He said the ball's clearly played in their own half. There's no offside whatsoever, so it can't possibly offside. And Chris Foy should have overruled the assistant referee. And for me, Chris Foy's got to take the majority of the blame for that, because he was in such a good position. He has to see that the pass was in Tottenham's own half.
What's your view of that, Matt?
I agree completely. Poor decision. It's a great break by Tottenham. And it's
interesting to see the appointments this coming weekend after an error of that magnitude. I think possibly you would expect maybe not to see him in the Premier League.
Well, it's FA Cup this weekend, so it's the week after.
So in a way that we'll have forgotten by the time the next, or some people will have forgotten by the time the next Premier League.
Well, I think the only saving grace in that was that Tottenham were already 2-1 up. I think it'd have been 1-1. I mean, and also we talk about. Brian touched on it early on about Defoe. He missed a penalty in that game as well for Sunderland. At a crucial time.
Yeah. I think the other saving grace is the fact that if it was a forward who was going through, he'd have made more of it. Vertonghen's a defender, so it's a bit of fun. But certainly, if you're a forward in that situation.
Let's come on to the other North East club, Newcastle. We've talked about Sunderland there and their defeat at Tottenham. Newcastle won Southampton 2. This was Robert Madley, and an incident right at the end. I was following RefCam actually on this one, and Madley was getting pretty high praise for his handling of the game on RefCam. I forget who our expert was. He was willing him to come through the game without a major incident. And right at the end, Newcastle had denied a handball in the box.
I mean, it's exactly what Brian was saying earlier on about, John Carver. He wants to take over from Alan Pardew. He wants to be the number one coach there, or the head coach at Newcastle United. And then, I thought Newcastle played really well. Once again, we're talking about a big decision, a big handball decision, about deliberate handball. How many times do we discuss about recognition of what's deliberate and what's not deliberate? I mean, it was so easy. He's got an absolutely perfect view, and for me it's a deliberate handball. He makes himself bigger, he raises his hand to stop. Fonte knows exactly what he's doing, and it should be a penalty. And again, we look at that, and you look at as Brian, he's a manager. He's a manager out in Norway. When you've got a team, you're picking your best 11 players for that game, aren't you?
Yeah.
Now we have 10 referees, doing the big games week in, week out, every week, and you pick your 10 best referees that are in form. I mean, I look at that game. Robert's a new referee, relatively new referee, inexperienced, doing that game live on TV. Okay, and we've got Mark Clattenburg, who's recognised as our number one by UEFA, who's not refereed a live game since the 21st of September. 21st of September.
That's 4 months.
That's 4 months. And he's refereeing the big Champions League games. He refereed the Super Cup at the start of the season. And we're not using our best referees. Well, they've got to look at the way they appoint the referees to these games.
Is he getting punished, or is there a problem?
It's about if you. I mean, you've said it, you've seen it. You can see it. And it's about if your face fits. If your face don't fit, Brian, it's exactly the same in a football club. You fall foul of the manager, but they don't take it out on you all the time. They don't take out vendettas, do they? You might get a suspension for one game and might leave you out, but then he'll bring you back in, won't he?
Yeah.
Looking at it objectively, he's had more fixtures maybe lately, but they've been low key, haven't they? They've tended to be the lower key Premier League games. He got a slightly higher profile one last weekend with Liverpool at Aston Villa. More in keeping, maybe.
Yeah, as I say, I mean, if you looked at the game, I watched the game on TV on Football First, and you just look at his positioning, his movement, his fitness. He's there all the time, and that's what you gain.
What more does he have to do? You may well feel.
And to gain respect to the players, you're making the right calls all the time. That's how you get your respect to the players, and the game becomes easy, doesn't it, Brian?
That's right. And like you say, I mean, he's one of the highest recognised referees we've got. I think it's important that when you've got that, you have to use it.
Okay, so he'd be on your team sheet. pretty much first every week, would he, or one of the?
Well,
first
I wouldn't go that
selections?
far. I'm not really a big fan of referees. But no, in fairness, I think he's recognised out there as somebody who's got a very good profile.
Brian, thanks ever so much. So have you. Good to see you. Hope we can welcome you again onto the Ref Show. Mark, as ever, many thanks to you. If you've got any queries or questions, then please let us know on youaretheref.com. There's always talking points here, and we'll be back with more next week. Bye. See you then.